I did it. I get so excited when everything works like it's supposed to. And with Mercury retrograde, I just never know. Each time is a challenge. Welcome, your backup plan tribe to this week's awesome podcast, awesome live stream video that we're going with today. I'm so excited to get this party started today because we have a special guest from Louisville, Kentucky area, and I am stoked because you guys, emergency responders, nurses, doctors, the medical health field is going to really appreciate what Dr. Clare has to tell you today. So your backup plan tribe, welcome. If you are new here, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We are always trying to make it grow, make it share around the world so that you can learn from every story. You can get inspired and get motivated from each topic. It's always a beautiful, inspirational story that we always come with, real life stories with real life people. So if you are new here, welcome to your backup plan tribe, to our channel today. My name is Tina Ginn, and I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author, and a financial expert and an app developer of Your Backup Plan app. And I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, BC. And it's quite sunny today, so I had to close my blinds. So we interview real life people each and every week, with sometimes lots and lots each week, with their real life stories, which really talks with your heart. And that's what I'm all about. We talk taboo, but hey, taboo is sometimes talking with your heart. And that's what I'm all about. And if you want to keep up with our videos, please subscribe. That's the subscribe button. Otherwise, you'll never know when we post a new video or go live. Be sure to click on that bell so you get notified. Your backup plan app puts your life in one place so that you are in preparation of any unpredictable circumstance, any storm that you have to manage, taking that painful aftermath out of that tragedy so that you're not left holding the bag, so to speak. And I always want to also welcome my German listeners, because it's an ever-growing subscription that I am building, is my German subscribers for some reason. And meine deutsche Freunde sind in Zoom Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Alle danke für eine Freundschaft. Alle danke. Thank you. You guys are really kicking ass when it comes to listening to our podcasts and our live streams. So thank you. I want to thank you so very much. So welcoming our new guest today from Louisville, Kentucky area is quite astounding because, I talk about in my show every week about how we're not prepared for the pandemic, how we're not prepared for COVID, how we're not prepared for storms that we get in our lives. It could be the C word, it could be a stroke, could be a wildfire, it could be a flood. And we get a lot of those in the last 10 years. They're ongoing in the news. So why are we not prepared? That's the big question. But some of these answers, I'm sure that Dr. Clare will have for us. So welcome, Dr. Clare. I'm going to bring you on. There we go.
Hello. Hi, Tina.
Hi, I'm so happy to have you on today's show to talk about something from your heart and learn how to listen. And I'm sure that your field will encompass everybody, although the medical field really needs to listen what you have to say.
Well, thank you. One thing is, two things actually. You're at the beginning where you talk about your app, the little commercial. I just have to laugh because I have two sons. I have two great, wonderful sons, and I have two wonderful daughters-in-law. And I always think I need to be really nice to my daughters-in-law because they're going to be in on my long-term care decisions.
Yeah.
So that really tickled me. And then the other thing is too, I really appreciate that you recognize the need of emergency preparation. The Saturday before Katrina hit the Gulf Coast of the United States, I was at an emergency preparedness meeting for UMCOR. It's United Methodist Church Committee on Relief, and we left early because they said, "Oh, it looks like this hurricane's gonna be pretty strong." But I worked with families and clergy, and immediately after, we were in Jackson, Mississippi, and still we were without power for a couple of weeks. And I worked with families who were staying at the shelters. And, that was before everybody had laptops and they had left all their information on their computers.
All to be gone.
To be gone. And then to watch them at these little computers that were set up by the Red Cross trying to reconstruct their lives, without their passwords.
Yeah. And sometimes we can't even remember our own passwords, let alone try and figure out what other person's are.
That's right. And the other thing, it was interesting. So I am a widow. My husband died in 2018, and I was married to one cool dude. And he had been sick for a while, and I kind of thought I was ready. But man, you get those. I was in a fog. I feel like I'm just coming out of my fog. But I remember immediately after just stuff like the life insurance policies or the pension money, and thank God I was around people who advised me well, because I couldn't really I thought I had my stuff together, but I didn't. And I really could have made some mistakes if I hadn't had such good help.
Well, there's one thing also about being prepared and thinking that you are prepared. But my big point of everything is, if you have it prepared, do you understand it?
Ooh, yeah. Yes.
So that's where I've created the new program, which is the Emerging Blueprint, to go with the app so that it helps you understand what it is you have to start with, because maybe you need to make an alteration to it. And isn't that empowering and give strength to the person, whether you're a woman or a man, to be able to go into that financial advisor or that department and say, I think that this isn't what I need. I need to have this. I want to have this instead.
Yes. And that's one thing, like in this listening model that I taught. Let me find my book. Just happen to have my book with me.
Yes.
But I guess I could do it without all of the little pieces of paper. But we talk about the importance of listening, but also the importance of questions. And I think too that I just completed a class, and it's called Question Formulation Technique, QFT, that I took through Harvard, a little Harvard class. I figured it was the cheapest way I'd ever get to go to Harvard, but it was offered through the Graduate School of Education. But they were talking about the empowerment of having the right question and having not only the skill, but as you get the skill, then you gain your confidence. And originally this method was started to teach school children, but then they figured out that the parents needed it, because so many times parents would go to teacher conferences and not even know what to ask. So I think too, as you say, that to have an understanding of what you have is really important, and also having the courage to speak up and ask the questions
Right,
and ask the
because
questions.
exactly, and you only get the courage by the knowledge.
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
you feel like you're backed by the knowledge. So maybe you have too much life insurance. Maybe you don't have enough life insurance. Maybe your life insurance is ending. Maybe you don't want it to end. Maybe you have other plans for it. Like there's so many questions, but it all boils down to what kind of house policy do I have? What kind of travel insurance do I want? What kind of preparation for anything? Anything.
Well, and I was a critical care chaplain for many years, and then I worked with Kentucky Organ Donation Affiliates, CODA, as family support and designated requester for organ donation. And so many times in variety, and I'm sure, Tina, I'm sure you've come across this too. So many times, whether it's man or woman, wife or husband, spouse, or however y'all are together, one person kind of runs the show and knows everything.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody, oh, she never even had to pay a bill because dad took care of it all. Well, that might have been nice for most of your life, but here you are, a widow, and now what are you going to do? Where do you know where the paperwork is?
Right.
The passwords, or or dad never had to do a thing. Well, you got to. I mean, you can't afford to be helpless.
No. Especially I find with younger women pushing a baby buggy, and I'll say, what's your backup plan? And they say, oh, my husband has it all looked after. No. No, he doesn't. I can tell you that right now. Because everybody just they just all fly by the seat of their pants. So don't think that. Don't go down that.
Well, and that was one thing. I think the most empowering thing about my husband's, well, there were two things. One thing was, so I worked at a hospital. He was diagnosed with, at first they were calling it lung cancer, but it turned out it was thymic cancer. And I was told that for every 1,000 cases of lung, there's one of thymic, which is weird. That's right behind your breastbone. And there weren't any studies. I mean, we were kind of cooked going in. But the head of geriatrics psychiatry department at the hospital took me aside and he said, well, what, are you taking care of yourself? And I was like, oh, yes, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And of course, I wasn't taking care of myself. But then he said, we find that the caretakers die before the patients.
Interesting.
And I thought, and it just came, I thought, I'm not going down with the ship. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to support James, but I'm not going down with the ship. And, and one thing that was a biggie, I remember one time, James ended up with dementia because he had cardiomyopathy, heart failure from all the treatment. And so I lost him a little earlier than just losing him. But one day I was fussing at him about something, and he didn't use the B word, but he was circling around it. I mean, that wouldn't have been like him to ever. He was a very kind person. So, but he was kind of circling around it. And I said, look, James, I'll tell you one thing. This illness has changed you, and it has changed me. I've become the person I need to be to fight for you.
And you.
And me. And I'd always been a people pleaser, and it just so even in the C word, there can be gifts. There can be gifts.
So how long did he suffer with that then?
4 years, which was interesting because there were so many times when, I'd been told, well, this is about to get ready. And toward the end, he was on hospice, and the hospice nurse said, yeah, we can't figure out why he's holding on so long. And we think it's the love of a good woman.
It's always.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, and they're thinking, oh, isn't that nice? And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this poor man, I need to let him go. I don't want him to be here suffering for me. So,
Right.
yeah.
But isn't it true? I say that too, that when your family member or friend is going, I talk about being present. I talk about really being present, not worrying about anything else that's surrounding you. All
Yes.
where's
Yeah.
your bank accounts and where's your key and what
Yes.
kind of food do you feed the cat?
Yes.
It's all these little things.
What's your password on your phone?
Yeah. What's your passwords, period? Where are and how many people have one bank account? Nobody, hardly ever.
Yeah.
Your investments are different places, your bank accounts are different places, and you don't even know if you've gotten them all when you're looking at after the fact. So,
and the other thing, I think, Tina, it's really important to understand that if you're, in a way, when I was working with organ donors, so many times the death was sudden, young people out of the blue, but like I was in a situation where, okay, I'm a clinical healthcare professional, basically, even though I am a doctor of ministry and I'm an elder in the United Methodist Church and serve churches. But that even though I knew it was coming and I thought I had it together, but my son got me hooked up with a really good financial advisor who walked me through the after death stuff. He was so kind and so patient with me. I found that I thought I had my act together, but there was a part of me that was a little scared to know everything ahead of time, almost like maybe that was being unfaithful. If I'm totally prepared for his death, am I giving up?
are you calling it in?
Yeah, exactly. And we have a friend who's in the Army, and he said, look, no, you strengthen your base camp. And then you work on, everything else peripheral. And so this guy got on the phone with me with my husband's pension. And I knew he had one. I kind of didn't want to know, it was just kind of weird. I had a weird, and so we were on the phone for 2 hours trying to find my husband's money that was supposed to be mine now. And it turned out when they transferred it to my account, they switched the last 2 digits of my social security number. And so since I'd been a chicken and didn't really have a
Knowledge.
Yeah. I didn't even know. And it was a bunch, and not $1 zillion, but it was substantial. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and you can find out things much later on, right? Years and years later. Sometimes it's too late. What kind of assistance do you give people now during COVID? Are you in the healthcare realm a lot now?
Well, I retired from Kentucky Organ Donation in last May. And it was funny. I told them in January of 2020 that I was ready to retire. I was working on my book that was, which was kind of interesting. It was part of my doctoral study. I taught critical care nurses a listening method. And we found out that positively affected patient care through intentional listening, expectant, intentional listening. So on the day that I was defending my dissertation in Chicago, James was getting his first biopsy in New Orleans. And I just wrapped it all up after. And I'll be perfectly honest. The first time that I went before my committee, they turned my project down and delayed my graduation a year, and which really but anyway, in a way, it was a gift, because once I figured out I wasn't going to graduate that year, that's when I could put it away and give James my full attention. But he always wanted me to get back to it.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I'm really familiar with healthcare. I love nurses. Look, when I went to New Orleans, I was full-time critical care nurse in New Orleans after serving local churches in Mississippi, throughout Mississippi. And I got to EJ and I was home. I loved it. The fact they used to call me the happy chappy, because I was always humming. I was always so happy. I loved it there. And but when James got sick, we had to get closer to my home because we needed more family. But my heart lies with the nurses. And not too long ago, someone with an assisted care facility, the leadership called me, and they had seen somebody read my book and asked, and they said, picked it up, tracked me down, and they said, "We are stuck in grief. Can you help us? And we just need to change directions." And so I said, "Yeah." So I'm working on this program. I'm going to go over and meet with them in person this weekend. But we're talking about, reflect on what's happened. It's important to name your grief. It's important to feel your grief. Tina, so many times in the 3 years that my husband's been dead, I could have looked away. I could have numbed out, or done a little more shopping than I did, or eaten a little more, or,
pushed it down.
But I really felt like I had to feel it. To get through it, I had to feel it. And that's what this book for me was, really my grief work, because I had a reason to get out of bed every day. And I told one of my kids, I said, "Look, it would have been really easy for me to curl up in the fetal position and wait for your dad to come get me." And but I felt like this work is so important. And this, I did all this before COVID, all this, and now I'm able to support people. And so let's say we reflect, and we're talking about reconnect. And that's what, one of the things we found out in the study was that when you really listen to people, they call that deep listening. So deep listening can lead to a deep connection. And a deep connection can lead to transformation. So the first step is reflect on the trauma, release it. We did a little ceremony. I gave them some ideas, and it was neat. They wrote out, I said, "What is the worst story for you last year? What's the story you've never told anybody?" And I suggested, I said, "Why don't you, not to sound too woo-woo, but why don't you go out there, take that story and burn it, and just let the smoke rise up to the heavens, and just let it go."
Let it go.
But then this was really cool. They told me after I had talked to them that they decided as a group, they wrote out their stories, and then they shredded them. They made a ceremony of shredding those stories. And
cool.
And they said it was like the weight lifted from the room.
And it was probably better as a group.
Yes, I think so.
The strength and the bonding and the power.
Yes, yeah. Because, you think about too, that is a communal trauma. It's
energy.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing that I've started offering is what I call heart to heart, and to be a listening partner. And so what I'm doing, and all this you can read about me on my website, yourlisteningpartner.com.
Oh, okay. I'll make
But
sure I put that down below.
okay, thank you. But I find the one thing that I bring to help people who have been in healthcare, especially in these situations, they can't go home and talk about it to their families, but I can listen. I know what they've gone through. I can hear the story and not blink. And so many times it's just getting the story out that is where the healing can begin. I had a patient in ICU who had, after Katrina, lived in St. Bernard Parish. And St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana is what we would call a county. And that whole county was flooded. I mean, everything was flooded. I talked to one woman who was rescued after a week of living on top of her kitchen table.
Oh,
I mean, just terrible stuff. But this one woman shared with me her story of survival. And Tina, sometimes you hear stories and they change you. And it was one of those. And it was awful. It was awful. And she was being held. She was getting medically stable before she was admitted to the psych unit. And it was like she was caught in that loop of trauma. And as I listened to her story, I said, God, give me strength. Give me strength to hear and affirm her story. And, I can't say, oh, and she lived happily ever after and all that. But I think just listening and acknowledging how awful that was maybe it was just important to me. I hope it was important for her.
it's unbelievable about how someone could be on top of a kitchen table for a week. To think that you have the loneliness, the fear of what's going to happen next. Like, is it going to keep on going up, or is it going to start going down, or what?
And then the water was polluted. And I met her at the hospital. She had lost one leg. She was diabetic. She had lost one leg from the being infected by the waters. Now she was losing her second one. And then in Louisiana, this was during the oil spill. I walked in the room and her son is on the floor sobbing. Here his mom's getting ready to lose her other leg. He was losing his boat because his fishing business, because
your job, your career, another trauma.
But something that was kind of neat. There is so much. People say, oh, well, I just don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just to be with someone. On the anniversary of my husband's death, I'm grinning about the anniversary anyway, but it was interesting because I thought I'd circled around it all day, and I was like, and finally I thought, I'm just going to stretch out on the couch and cry. Well, I have this little cat that I rescued, and she's not warm and fuzzy. She
does her own thing.
She does her own thing. But when I stretched out on the couch to cry, she came over and sat on my chest. And I sobbed, and I was like, and so she was kind of like she was surfing, but she didn't move. And then when I was done, she left. And I was telling her, I said, Miss Ruthie, that's her name. I said, Miss Ruthie, in my biz as a chaplain, we call that the ministry of presence. And it was a comfort just to have another, even if it was four-legged, but to have another energy there with me.
Cats and dogs animals are just so in tune with that inner presence. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest other than for the nursing staff or other people, during COVID, we are unable to be present with the person possibly in the hospital, or
Yes.
what
Yeah.
do we do after? And when they do come home, and how do you go through that grief? Because you're struggling for their pain and what they've gone through, and now you're happy that they're come out of the hospital hopefully.
But you've been traumatized too. And that's one thing that's interesting, because the man that designed my book cover is in India. And I asked him to do some work on my website for me. And he's just a talented guy. And I mean, I don't really know him or anything. I just know him
Yeah.
through Fiverr, But I've been, it was odd because he always gets back right away. And so I've been sending him messages, and and I said, I'm just concerned about y'all. And he said, last night I got a message, and he said, my family's okay, but we're all beginning to be affected mentally by this. He said it's very bad. And so I think it's important to remember that, again, like with my husband's illness, he was the one doing it. It was his illness, but especially as being the good codependent wife that I was for many years, it was my illness too. And I remember right after he died, my one son is in the Army Reserves, and I kept listening. I was still hyper vigilant,
Yeah.
and and waiting to hear in the next room. And he said, "No, Mom, it takes a while to come to back down from a fight."
That's true.
And I think too that that's part of the grieving process, is unwinding. Like, I understand that it's still really tough for y'all in Canada as far as lockdown, and here in the United States it's starting to loosen up a little bit. But I find I don't want to give up my mask. And I never thought I'd say that, but one thing is, I'm going to be working with in a facility that's where they still wear masks. So I've still been isolating before I go over there, because I would hate to bring anything to anybody over there, even though I've been vaccinated. But it's
that fear. It's that fear,
yeah,
right?
It's that fear. It's that fear. But and so I think when people come home, it's, from what I understand, it's not like when you, so many times, like say you've been to the hospital for pneumonia, you get the IV antibiotics, get to come home, do your pulmonary rehab and all that there are these long-term effects that can affect you physically and spiritually and emotionally. This is an assault on all levels. And I think too that it's important to acknowledge the grief and the pain and the suffering of the individual patient, but also it's really important to acknowledge your own pain.
Is that part of the reconnecting then, that next step?
Yes, I think it is, because really, if you think about, until you, it'd be easy to get caught in the reflect part. Like the lady with the St. Bernard Parish, she was caught in the reflect part. But that acknowledging that, yes, that was awful right then and there.
Yeah.
The 23rd Psalm talks about the valley of the shadow of death. And death can come in, it's not necessarily physical death. It's a form of transformation, and that's where we talk about when you reconnect with your soul, with who you are, remembering who you are. Around January, it was funny because I was like, James and I were yoked. I really had a good marriage. And in fact, somebody I remember said, how it's always been James and Claire. It's not James and Claire, it's James and Claire, you know? And then around January, I started kind of waking up. And I thought, oh, this must be what it was like for Sleeping Beauty. You can see her kind of waking up and rubbing her eyes and saying, what happened? Where did that decade go? And so I think that's part of my reconnection and remembering who I was. And really, I think too, you talk about the plan B. It's important to remember that there's a core strength in each and every one of us. There's wisdom within each and every one of us that in some traditions call it your soul, some people call it God or spirit. There's wisdom within that is what just wants to be invited
and used,
but it's not, there's free will. It's not going to come till you ask for it. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I mean, my husband's come to me in dreams, and he'll show up. I'll be, oh, the day that I uploaded the book to Amazon was awful. It was awful. I thought I was going to throw up. I was so scared. And I thought, it's like, okay, World Wide Web, here's my jugular, And I just said out loud, I said, James, man, this would be so much more fun if you were here. And the Beatles song, Little Darling, came to mind. I thought, he's here, he's around. And so, we've gotten away from that depth of experience around us that, in traditional religious cultures that acknowledge that there is life after death. There are people around us. I call them my great. I call it the great cloud of witnesses, the GCW squad. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, man, y'all got to help me out with this one, and I feel better knowing that they're around, and I invite them, and I believe.
Yes.
I feel great comfort in that.
I find it comforting, and I find it less alone, and I feel you're protected.
Yes.
So all of those three things, I feel safe.
Yes.
And very interesting, because I think there's so many, this last year in 2020 there's still emergencies. So
yes.
And then there's the COVID epidemic on top of that. For
Yes.
all those people that are involved in all of that. I mean, just my mother who, had a heart palpitation, and we're saying you should go to the hospital. Oh no, I want to stay away from there.
Yeah.
Right? Because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it's brought a whole lot of different levels. And I think we had a recent death in our vicinity here of a 46-year-old male who was sick with COVID. He thought he was fine. It was the 10th day, and he died in his sleep, and his wife found him. And to think the guilt that you would have after that, the finding him, and it could be even a parent or a friend, or it could be anybody, really.
Yeah. I was 10 years old. I found my grandma dead sitting on the toilet. And, I guess, and her brother had died. So I guess her heart just gave away, and that she was releasing. And, you just don't know.
No.
But I think the guilt thing is really important too. And coming back to healthcare workers, nurses, I mean, nurses are kind of the stars, but I mean, the respiratory therapists, the nutritionists, the
lab techs,
services. I mean, the wet people, right? And those who aren't on the front line. So many I talk to feel bad because they feel like they're not doing all that they can, even though they're supporting. That's good. But I think too that with healthcare professionals, there is a level of care. See, I find that over the years that people who come to healthcare or any of the healthcare providers, that whole, and really, if you think about firemen, teachers, I mean, when you're being called a particular way of life, but there's a quality of care, you know, the institution might have or does have specific guidelines.
Policy. Yeah.
Yes. But each individual has their own level of integrity as far as care. And when that is compromised, that is trauma.
So,
and here they can't count. I mean, the hospital, they haven't been able to count on this occupation they love to take care of them,
right,
to keep them safe.
Because they take that episode of what happened that day, they go home to their family, and then they have to go back possibly the next day or the next shift and start all over again. So how do you get from being in your own space and you're maybe getting the help from your team, because your team obviously must be supportive, but then go home, and how do you get that support from home? What do you suggest? Because everyone's affected.
Everyone is affected. Absolutely, Tina. And the thing is too, that I was thinking, well, when, you know, once my husband developed dementia, and before then too, I was, you know, was working with organ donor families, and I found I had to stop telling him about my work because he took it to heart, and he would be really concerned about the families, and I think, and I can see where someone coming home from work and having a hard day, you don't want to tell your family, if you're married or you know, whether it's your
and wife, a partner,
your partner, they want to fix it for you. They don't, and they can't necessarily understand the depth of what you've experienced.
No, because I mean, I haven't been in the position, but I can picture. It's not just the episode of that person, but it's, to me, after having a car accident, it's the smell.
Yes.
It's the feeling, it's the energy, it's the I can feel it all. And I think it's all of that you can't explain of that person passing. That can trigger all of these sort of feelings.
Yes. Yeah. And trigger is the word. Trigger is the word. Definitely. So I guess one thing is that, so I find that one thing that's challenging is that a lot of the healthcare workers I work with are, I don't want to say cowboys, you know, they're process people. They follow the steps. They go A, B, and do their assessment. They follow the whatever, you know,
guidelines and
the guidelines are. But I think that it's important, you know, we got two sides of the brain. You know, we got the left side that I'd say is like Mr. McGregor's garden. It's all orderly and everything. And when a nurse goes into the room and does an assessment, even without saying a word, you know, she or he is flipping through the file cabinet trying to put that in a neat little place. And then you got the right side of the brain that's like, I say it's like Where the Wild Things Are, the Maurice Sendak book, but it's the garden and all that. And so if you're a clinical kind of head person, maybe your comfort lies in sticking to your left side of your brain where there's order, but you still need to tap into that other side so you can tap into your emotion. And journaling is really good. Also, I've kept a journal since I started college. And I go back and look at, you know, I might not write in it for a year or two. I'm working on another book called A Widow's Heart. And it's based on my journals, writing from while James was sick. And but it really helps me talk to myself and talk to that wisdom inside of,
And process.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a really good tip.
The other thing, it's really important to stop during the day, maybe, and like say before you work with, well, I'm keep talking about patients, but like if your client or your child, your husband, just stop and take a breath, ground yourself, and just take a little break. When I was in the hospital, what I used that time when I used the hand sanitizer, just to kind of break the rhythm I was in.
Right.
Take a deep breath, kind of imagine my feet going all the way to the ground, and then preparing myself to go in, because we've got this energy around us, and we can carry it with us throughout the day. And it's important to not, I'd say it's like, a tennis game, and we kind of bat it back and forth, but it's important that you are careful of your own energy, what you're throwing out. If somebody cuts you off on the way to work, or you're standing in line at the grocery store and you're irritated because they have more than 10 items, if you carry that with you all day, then that's not good, because you're going to be spewing it out on other people as well as suffering yourself. I believe that every morning when I do it, I think it's important to have a time where you reflect.
Whatever that looks like.
Whatever it looks like. Maybe it's on the way to work and you're just saying, whoever you are up there, help me make it through the day. Help me do the best I can do today. But I also, I believe in protection around me. I don't have to take, just because somebody's got some junk, I don't have to take it. And in my prayers, I'll say, I place myself in the white light of protection. And anything that comes to me, I'm going to return back. It's impersonal. Never, I don't do it with love or hate, because if I give it my emotion, that just feeds it.
Right.
So there's we have to take care of ourselves that way too.
I think it's funny because my explanation of your story just now would be my first daughter was colicky.
Oh, that's hard. Yes.
And
yes.
And it has to be your first one too, of course. So then you don't want any more. But I remember bringing her down to the doctor in this long hallway, and I remember the nurse that was inside the office door. Oh, here she comes, the most colicky baby we've ever seen. And I could hear that. And so then I would take her everywhere shopping, and she liked to be carried like a football. And I was not, for the first 3 months, I couldn't dress her all up and be all fancy. And like all these other moms that brought their babies to show them off. Oh, this is my new baby. No, because she just screamed the whole time. So I learned to get grounded. I had to learn to put her down in a safe place at home and go to somewhere safe and quiet and get re-energized. And that's how I picture the hospital. Yeah. That's how I picture you can't just have an issue at the hospital and say, oh, I got to go for right now. I got to go and get quiet for a minute. Well, no, there's no time for that. But I'm not saying to do that. But when you get a moment to really take that time and take a breath, because you can't continue on this roller coaster.
No.
Day after day after day of the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. You're right, Tina. And I really think just taking a breath, and just Now, just stop and take a deep breath and, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just kind of regroup.
I used to say to people, even if you don't smoke, that's your out, go for a smoke break. That's your moment to go outside and get your act together.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the emergency room is like this past year and two years. I just can't.
I cannot either. And the thing is, I think about so much of care is, before people had to wear gloves and all that, but so much of this is personal. And, with touching, doing an assessment. I was at the grocery store and I smiled at the person. I had my mask on. I said, you know what? I'm smiling. You can't. I'm smiling. And I said, see, my eyes are crinkling. But to be wrapped in, in plastic and just, man, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole different feeling. There's so much non-touch, right? So much.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be really, really important for us as a society to acknowledge the grief and pain that these healthcare workers,
caregivers,
and you know what?
Paramedics.
Yes. And you know what? I have to wait. Let me get my hand so you can see it. I have a confession to make. All the years that I was a minister, and I was pretty good. I'm real good with that pastoral care. And I look back and I thought, I should have taken better care of the caretakers. I just didn't really understand. I didn't, but again, so many times, with so many things you don't know until you're there. And you don't know what a lonely spot that is. People come by and say, oh, let me know if there's anything I can do. But you're not going to do that. Somebody, your family, they need to say, I am going to bring you supper on Tuesday night. Or I will come by and visit and let you go outside. When my husband was sick, it was funny. We moved up here from New Orleans and we stayed with my mom until our house was finished. And so we didn't have a washing machine at my mom's. So I'd go hide out at my sister's and do the laundry. Or I was doing physical therapy I had to hurt my foot. And I was like, well, I got to go do my PT. But that was the only way I guess I felt comfortable claiming that alone time.
That for yourself.
And you got to fill the well back up.
I think, because we could get sick or just keep stuffing it down, and your body's going to bubble over at some point.
Yes.
So you haven't spoken about doctors. Is that any different than the nursing staff?
Well, the doctors are pretty darn cool. And I guess that, in fact, I have a daughter-in-law who is a doctor. And one thing is that I think that mostly my experience has been with nurses, although doctors, it's a real, there is a culture of doctorhood that I think is going to be a bigger challenge for them to admit that they need the help that they're going to need. And I think that
are they taught to have a tough skin? That?
Yeah. And my heart goes out when I was working with CODA with the organ donation, and then over at the University of Louisville Hospital, it's a teaching hospital, and here these young medical professionals, they're maybe they just finished medical school, they're starting to do their further training, all that stuff, and I think, and this was before COVID, and I thought, how different medical life is for those professionals than if they're, how much has changed since the time they first applied for med school,
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I think that it's really important. The doctors are going to feel it too. And so many, I've heard of so many who are retiring. But the thing is, that's running away. You need to confront it. You need to acknowledge the pain. That's the first.
Do you find it easier as a group? Do you think they would find it easier to have these sessions to do it as a group than to try and figure it out for themselves, to take that time and find what works for them?
I think that that's a really good question, because I think on one hand, like right now with these, I have this. Wait, let me find where I've written the book. I've got a workbook that goes with it, but I think if you're not used to that language of self-reflection, that it's good to be in a group with somebody who can lead you through that. And that's what I'm doing with these folks now. But I think too, but then the tricky side is, okay, if you're in a professional environment, and who's going to run the group? How much are you going to reveal? They all, there's licensing issues. How do you got to protect your license. How much you're going to reveal. So I think that that's going to be part of the solution, is to find a way to do that in a group, because so I don't know.
Because I really think that there could be 10 nurses in the same department. The same thing has happened to every one of them. But
Yes.
it's sometimes your past. It might be your past experiences. It might be childhood that has a little different twist on what you're feeling than the next person.
Yes.
That's what I picture.
So you're right. But then, so again, so it would be the communal response to the trauma. Like, say, ICU, all the nurses, they get to know they all know each other, and it's kind of like a little tribe. And not just ICU, whatever your specialty is, it's kind of your little tribe. You should have that common experience of what you experience every day.
Yeah.
And also your team, because they cover each other's backs. And, sometimes I'm on these different Facebook groups that, sometimes these nurses aren't kind to each other. I think that there's a much better culture than from the stories I heard, some of the more seasoned nurses when they started out. And, nurses had the reputation for eating their young and stuff. But I think that they, when you're in an environment that is very support, where you can support each other, and maybe that's it, Tina, maybe that's the idea. If you can get smaller groups or smaller tribes, or, where people have that shared, it might be even like working with trauma folks, like after a natural disaster. I mean, you have that shared experience. But again, you're going to have your own individual responses too.
Yeah. And sometimes you feel open, and sometimes you don't feel open, or you don't know what it is. There's something, but you.
Yes. And the bottom, Maslow's hierarchy, the bottom rung on all that is you got to feel safe, and to be in a place of safety before you can speak out and process it. But, and I think one thing that's kind of interesting, if you think about, like, I first went to the counselor when I was in college. I mean, I've done counseling on and off. I've gotten to the point where if I go to somebody new, it's like, oh man, I got to tell my story again.
Oh gosh,
I'm done, But not everybody has been reflective. And so that's part of the process, I think, as far as creating these groups, is how people who don't think, maybe have an opinion about getting help, or my good friend Gwen used to say, I feel some kind of way about that. But the so how do you help them again find the language? And that's to me what I've really, where I feel like my call to work is to be is my personal mission is to help nurses reset and reconnect to their call to service. And I think that's good. And but really, it can be healthcare workers or
Yeah.
it's funny. My reviews on Amazon, on my Amazon best-selling book, but most of the reviews are. I mean, it's not just medical people; it's just people who recognize that listening
And
isn't all.
caring for someone,
Yes.
possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The links are down below for your book. I will add your website also down below. What I was going to say is that I think it's interesting I've only been in the hospital once when my father-in-law was passing away,
Mhm.
and he didn't have much time left. I couldn't be in the room. I couldn't stay in the room.
And you chose not to. You didn't feel like you could
I
be there.
would go I could go in and out of the room,
Yeah, yeah.
but I couldn't stay in the room like the rest of the family did. And they all sat in there with their big winter coats on. And I was so hot. If anybody has been through a menopause or a
Uh-huh.
feeling of heat, like I was so hot, I was sweating, and
Yes.
I could not understand why they could sit in there with their coats on all day long. And so I would go up and down the hallway and visit other patients and talk to them.
Uh-huh.
And one lady was coming out of the shower and she didn't even have a towel on and I was helping her. So they started calling me what's her name? Nightingale.
Yeah, yeah. Florence Nightingale, the lady with
Yes.
the lamp. She just
So
had a birthday.
oh, so that's what they started calling me because I was spending we were there for 3 days, but I could not be in that room.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was so much energy in that room, and I think what was happening was that all of the spirits were coming down saying, "You can come.
yeah,
It's okay to come."
yeah.
But it wasn't like I could see them, but I could feel them.
Yes,
And
yes.
I was so hot. I can't even explain it to you.
No.
But as soon as I came out into the hallway, I cooled right down.
Huh. Well, and two, it could be it could be that maybe some of the other family. I affirm what I mean. I believe what you're saying because I think that there are just there. There's just something around it. You think about a fan. When it's off, you can see the blades. That's one dimension. When you turn it on and you can see through it, that's another dimension. And I believe that that's all around us, and all those people are around us. And so I definitely want to affirm what your intuition, what your wisdom was telling you about that. But it also could be that the family was just so numb, that maybe they didn't, I don't know, but sound like you were definitely picking up on the energy in the room.
Yes,
You were
yes.
kind of the lightning rod.
Oh my gosh, it was
Yeah.
horrible. It
But
was
but what I was going to say, one thing that I think is real important, especially in COVID, so many times what's really been hard for the nurses and the medical staff as well as the family is the idea that the person, someone they love died and they weren't there. And
yes.
and that is, I can't imagine, if that's something really important, I can't imagine what it must feel like when you can't. But I do want to say that for those who have died, I want to say to their loved ones that they did not die alone because they were surrounded by dedicated staff who have committed their lives to be present in every way for your loved one. And also, sometimes the loved one doesn't want you in the room. I had one case, it's the hospital, EJ, where this man was there. He was teetering on the edge for a long time. And there was always somebody in the room with him. There were 3 people. And one day, finally we had this code blue. And that was the first time in 6 weeks he had been alone. Somebody had gone out to smoke. Somebody had gone down to the cafeteria. And the third person went into the bathroom. And as soon as he was alone, this guy passed. He died. He transitioned to this. And then the family saying, oh, but he died alone. Sometimes that's the way they want it. Right. So don't beat up on yourself.
That's very good. What can they do to help themselves in that instance, other than knowing that that's what they possibly wanted? But it's so hard not to be there holding their hand. You know, that's what you regret, I guess. It's that regret.
Well, I believe in the power of writing a letter, right? Just, what about if you just said, dear Mama, I can't tell you how bad I feel that I wasn't able to. And, and list the worst. If you can speak the worst possible thing, then you are releasing yourself. That's where the freedom lies, because as long as you're holding it in and not talking about it, it's got a hold on you. I was speaking to someone who was having a baby, and she was in kind of at the end of, she was over 40, and and she'd had a miscarriage before. And I said, tell me, what are your biggest fears? And she started telling to me, and just letting it, like the pressure relief valve, just letting it out. And so I really think if you could write it out, or if you journal, and I believe there's in the power of wealth. I know some folks even put it through the shredder. I think that you can take it outside, and if you see it as a prayer, what you're writing is a prayer. If you take it outside and light it, burn it, and see, in the Old Testament they talk about the incense. It's like incense goes to God as a prayer. And I think too, it's important to forgive yourself
and release it.
Yeah.
And for some reason, in this body that we're in this presence, we need to visually see it. So that's probably why writing it or shredding it or burning it is probably our real brain.
The other thing is, when James was sick, and it was funny, I kept thinking, one day I thought, well, I've been thinking about such and such, and then I've been thinking about such and such. And I went, wait, thinking about, that's called worry. That's called worry, Claire. And so, again, coming back to the Old Testament, I love the Old Testament, but Moses in the bulrushes, that story is when, the Pharaoh was killing all the male babies, and the mother, all she could think of to do was to save her child, her son, who was Moses. She made a basket, put the baby in the basket, and pushed it off in faith. And one day I thought, gosh, what went into that basket? Somebody had to make that basket. It talks about how she put tar on the inside. That baby had a nice little soft bed. Well, where did she get she did all that work. And to put it in the basket and push it off in faith that whoever your higher power is going to handle it. So that's what I started doing with James, and with things that would come up about James, and I just have to release them because I didn't have any control. And at one point, I had to put James in the basket and push him off. And when I did, the basket went to his parents who were long gone.
But you knew he was well looked after.
Man, better than I could do.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Did you have any final messages to people, our listeners?
Well, I think that what's important to remember is that don't assume anything, and stay nimble. Don't assume that when you are talking to somebody that they understand what you're saying or that they're just like you. So I think so many times we'll say, oh, well, I told him that. Well, maybe what you said didn't come across the way you intended, or he's a different person. So just don't assume that we're all alike, that we all think the same way. And it's important to allow for diversity. Like my guy over in India, I don't know what faith he is. That doesn't mean I can't pray for him. Or what I'll say is, if I don't know, I'll say, well, I'm sending you my very best vibes, or I'm sending prayers, and just I think that's really important. And then I think it's really important too to be kind to yourself.
That's nice.
You don't have to be the hero. There are other people. When you reach out and allow other people to help you, you're giving them a chance to bless you, but also it's a blessing to them.
That's beautiful.
And I wish I could say I'm perfect at it, but I'm not. But
well, like when I was on a podcast and he says we're imperfect, we're perfectly imperfect.
That's it. And we're all trying. What the heck? I mean, really, it just. And the other thing is, what's that old thing about the two wolves? I mean, whatever you focus on, whatever you're sending your energy to, that's what's going to get stronger. Let me tell you this real quick. So, yeah. And I wrote this story. It's going to be in Guidepost magazine in August. I fell asleep at JFK Airport, and I missed my flight to Rome. I woke up, and my plane is pulling away. Well, I was I was still working, so I only had limited vacation stretch. So then, if I waited, even if I was considered a no-show, so they wouldn't refund my ticket. So even if I paid another ticket, I wouldn't get there in time for if just. Oh. But what I did was, and I thought, what if I did something really radical? And I didn't want to go home because that felt like that would have been defeat. But what about if I just said every morning, okay, God, where am I going today? And I rented a car because it was cheaper to rent a car for a week than, my return flight to Louisville was a week away. So I was sitting in the car in the lot at JFK, and I said, okay, God, where are we going today? And the name of my good friend Rachel, who I hadn't talked to in years, popped in my head. I happened to have her number in my cell phone. She lived in Maryland. I called her and she said, I've been thinking about you. I have this medical diagnosis I wanted to talk to you about, but I know you're still in New Orleans. And I wasn't, and I know you're really busy. And I was like, Well, guess what? I am nearby and I am on the way. And every day, so I went down and saw her, and it was funny because here I was going to a spiritual retreat in Assisi at the Franciscan monastery. So here I'm sitting with my friend Rachel in Maryland at a Franciscan monastery, and I was like, well, this wasn't what I had planned. I was supposed to be on the other side of the ocean, you know? But it was a remarkable week. I was on the Today Show. I mean, it was just reconnected with people I hadn't seen in a long time. I had probably better time than I would have at the spiritual.
It was meant to be. It was really meant to be, wasn't it?
It was, and and that's what I said. That was the point I wanted to make, is that I could have gotten mad, freaked out, gone home. And you know how many, maybe I'm the only one in the world who, when something bad happens, I want to tell everybody and, you know, in detail. Well, no, just move on. I love that song, you know, the Disney, Let It Go. You just got to let it go and move on. Move on.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I think as COVID and pre-COVID, that's kind of old energy. And we're moving into a new era. And that's where I say nimble. We need to stay nimble because we don't, as we have learned, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. But if we've got our plan B and we know where all of our information is, then that gives us a little more confidence to face the day. But
yes,
we've got to plow ahead.
Yes, and we have to make it better. Just have to.
Yes, yes. I think it's important. I'm so glad you said that, Tina, because I think that maybe one gift from COVID is that we've rediscovered that we do have some power. We do have some say. And we can make it better. It's the we can, you know.
Well, each individual.
Yes.
Group can make it better.
Yes. And I think change comes from the bottom. We have to change from the bottom.
Yeah, because it's never going to be the same again.
It's not. And is that all bad?
Some things.
Yeah.
Some things are better. Some things are worse. It's, I guess.
Yeah.
You just have to look if the glass half empty or is it half full.
Well, that reminds me as one of my friends told me as I was telling him about missing the plane to, and I was and if I was telling him about what all I did, it was like, and then somebody said, you know, you didn't make lemonade out of lemons. You made lemon meringue pie.
That's nice. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for coming on our show today. Thank you so very much.
I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Tina. And I really believe in the work that you're doing.
Thank you. It is important. I just, no one's Superman. We all think we are, and we're just not.
No.
We're not.
And we weren't meant to be. It's we're the ones who want to make us Superman. Other people don't expect that of us. Why are we so hard on ourselves?
Yeah. Did you find your husband was like that, was Superman? Like nothing was ever going to affect him or hurt him? Or?
Well, that was a problem. And because I'm sorry he and I didn't talk about it more. The way he handled it was he really believed that he was going to be physically healed. That was what his prayer was. And so we had at some point I hired a sitter, and James didn't want a sitter. So I said, well, she's your administrative assistant. And well, he would talk to her about him being really sick and dying and stuff. But for some reason but he wouldn't he kept up a false front with our children.
To be strong.
Yeah. And I think that in a way that was, maybe that's what he needed. Maybe that's what he needed. But then it was hard because, like, at the very first, I say, okay, guys, gentlemen, do you want a blow by blow account of what's going on, or you want like an overview? Oh no, we want to know everything. But here I'm standing in front of this fire hose of terrible news, and they didn't want it. That was their dad.
Yeah.
So that was tough, and I'm sorry, but he lasted 4 years, and he did it the way he wanted. And I always felt like he would ask questions when he was ready to hear the information.
Isn't that funny how long it takes people to process things?
Yeah. And what was really interesting, I always felt like he'd run hard until he couldn't go anymore. And that's the way it happened. I mean, the sitter took him out on Friday, and she said, I don't think we'll be going out anymore. He seems quite a bit weaker. And then dramatic change over the weekend. Monday, the sitter came back. She couldn't believe how much he changed. And he died Friday. He died on Good Friday at 2:59. And in the Christian religion, Jesus died at 3. And somebody said, yeah, Jim wanted to get out of here before the big guy did. So
he didn't want that competition.
He didn't want that competition. Yeah. And so it's funny now, it's on the day that he died, the anniversary I can handle, but it's the Good Friday, because it was Good Friday, So, and that's changed Easter for me. Holy Week. I have a whole different perspective on it now.
Oh, for sure. It would. Just like Christmas or birthdays.
Yeah.
That's a whole other show in itself, dealing with holidays and special occasions.
Oh, yeah.
Must be hard in the medical field too for that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know I'm going to have you come on again to talk about other areas. There's so much to cover in it. Absolutely. For healing and acknowledging that there is that feeling or problem within your heart.
Yes.
That's, I guess, the first call to action is to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's scary, but you're not going to dissolve. You're not going to die. It's the door. It's your gate to your freedom.
Yeah. Your mental freedom, especially.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you. I want to let everyone know that there's always a lesson in everything that we talk about. Brene Brown says everyone has a story that will bring you to your knees and be the survival guide for someone else. What will your story be? And that's exactly what Dr. Clare is here for us today. She has a story to share, and it comes from her heart to help heal other people like ourselves. It's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Clare, for coming on today.
Thank you. Well, you know what, Tina? I've had a lot of help along the way. And I think so it's important. I want to acknowledge that, but I encourage others to accept the help.
Oh, that's also needed. So thank you to our German listeners. Danke fürs Hören, meine deutsche Freunde. Danke, vielen Dank. Thank you for coming out today and listening. If you're listening on not the live show, that's okay too, because there's so much good information from today's show to take you to possibly getting Dr. Clare's book, to finding those tools to help yourself move forward, whatever that might look like for you. So thank you. Stay tuned for our next podcast or our live show. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I always end or prepare for the unexpected because you never know. You don't get out of this alive, in case you forgot. And I always end with Carol Burnett because she was always the best-hearted. A good laugh is always there with Carol Burnett. So thank you, Carol Burnett, for your lovely shows and your comedy. I'm so glad we had this time together, just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, everyone. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. Till the next show. Bye for now.
Bye.